Moses is the most important prophet in Judaism and one of the most important prophets in Christianity, Islam, and other Abrahamic religions. According to the book of Exodus, the Israelites who were enslaved by the Egyptian Pharaoh were increasing in population. The Pharaoh feared that they might ally themselves with Egypt's enemies. During the same time Moses was born, Moses had one older sister named Miriam and one older brother, Aaron. The Pharaoh ordered all the newborn males to be drowned in the Nile River. He feared that with their rise they may revolt against him. Moses' mother, Jochebed, placed him in an ark and concealed the ark in the bulrushes by the river. This is where the daughter of the Pharaoh found Moses, who brought him into her household. And so Moses grew up as an Egyptian. One day, Moses saw an Egyptian slave master beating up a Hebrew. Enraged, Moses killed the Egyptian. He then fled the city, fearing the Pharaoh's death penalty. He crossed the Red Sea and settled in Midian. There, he saved a group of girls who were being harassed by some shepherds. Moses was then invited to dine with the girls' father, a priest. Moses eventually married one of the priest's daughter, Zipporah. On Mount Horeb, God came to Moses and spoke to him as a burning bush and revealed his name. Moses regarded Mount Horeb as the mountain of God. God commanded Moses to return to Egypt and free his chosen people, the Israelites, from the bounds of the Pharaoh and bring them to the promised land. God also asked Moses to make Aaron his spokesperson because Moses could not speak fluently unlike his brother. But there was one confusing part because God also tried to kill Moses at one point. The reason is not clearly explained, but Moses' wife saved him. Some scholars believe that the reason why God was angry at Moses was because he had not circumcised his son. But this might not be the case. The way God tried to kill Moses is also not explicitly described. Hit the subscribe button and help this channel reach 1,000 subs. I know you guys can do it for sure. Now let's get back to the video. After the incident, Moses and his family returned to Egypt. When Moses stated that the Lord wanted to release all of the Israelites, the Pharaoh refused because he did not believe in the Lord and his ownership of Egypt. God was angered by the response of the Pharaoh, and he released the 10 plagues which engulfed the whole of Egypt. The river Nile turned blood. Thousands of frogs covered the land, soon followed by flies. Hailstorms ravaged the fields and destroyed the harvest. But only after the 10th plague did the Pharaoh finally break. That night, all the firstborn sons of every Egyptian household were killed. The Pharaoh relented and said to Moses and Aaron, "Take your flocks and sheep and go." Moses led the Israelites to the promised land, but the Pharaoh tried to ambush them on their way near the Sea of Reeds. The Israelites, scared at the sight of the army, turned to Moses. Moses stretched out his hand and the sea parted. And after crossing the sea, Moses put down his staff, and as soon as he did that, the divided sea came rushing down on the Pharaoh's army who were chasing them, killing every one of them. Moses then led the people to Mount Sinai, also called Mount Horeb, where he received the 10 commandments from God written on stone tablets. On the third day, there were thunder, lightning, thick clouds on top of the mountain, and loud sounds of the trumpet. All the Israelites gathered at the base of the mountain. After God came down on Mount Sinai, Moses went up to the Lord and then came down to prepare the people. After that, in Exodus 20, God spoke to all the people the words of the covenant, or the 10 commandments. Some scholars doubt that God came down to deliver his words, or Moses delivered on his behalf. The people were afraid to hear more and moved afar. Saying this, Moses responded, "Fear not." Moses read out the words written in the book of the covenant to all the people the next morning, and everyone agreed to be obedient and abide by the words of God. Moses escorted a select group consisting of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel to a location on the mount to worship. Here they saw God like a clear sapphire stone. The mount was covered with clouds for 6 days, and on the 7th day Moses went into the midst of the cloud and was in the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. After returning, he said that the Lord has bestowed upon him 2 stone tablets written with the finger of God. and written on those stone tablets the words that the Lord spoke upon all of the people on top of the mountain, referring to the incident when God spoke to the people of Israel on top of Mount Sinai. But before the 40 days expired, the people of Israel feared that something bad happened to Moses or that Moses had died. So the people compelled Aaron to build a statue which the Israelites worship, thus disobeying the word of God. After the 40 days, when Moses came back and saw the idol, he got so angry that he broke the stone tablets. After that, he ordered the idol to be burned down and melted. Moses also wrote down the 10 commandments on a new set of stones. Moses and the elders entered into a covenant where they became people of God, obeying his laws. Moses delivered the laws of God to Israel, instituted the priesthood under the sons of Moses' brother Aaron, and destroyed those Israelites who fell away from his worship. From Sinai, Moses led the people to the desert of Paran, on the border of Canaan. From there, he sent 12 spies into the land. The spies returned with samples of the land's fertility, but warned that its inhabitants were giants. People were afraid and wanted to return to Egypt, and some rebelled against Moses and against God. Moses told the Israelites that they were not worthy to inherit the land and would wander the wilderness for 40 years until the generation who had refused to enter Canaan had died, so that it would be their children who would possess the land. Later on, Korah was punished for leading a revolt against Moses. When the 40 years had passed, Moses led the Israelites east around the Dead Sea to the territories of Edom and Moab. There, they escaped the temptation of idolatry, conquered the lands of Og and Sihon, received God's blessings through Balaam the prophet, and massacred the Midianites, who by the end of the Exodus journey had become the enemies of Israelites due to their notorious role in enticing the Israelites to sin against God. Moses was twice given notice that he would die before the entry of the Promised Land. Once he had seen the Promised Land from a viewpoint on Mount Abarim, and again when the battle with the Midianites had been won. On the banks of the river Jordan, in sight of the land, Moses assembled the tribes. After recalling their wanderings, he delivered God's law by which they must live in the land, sang a song of praise, and pronounced a blessing on the people, and passed his authority to Joshua, under whom they would possess the land. Moses then went up Mount Nebo, looked over the Promised Land, spread out before him, and died at the age of 120. So this was the complete story of Moses, the most important prophet. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. If you want to watch more on mythology and lore, consider watching some of my other videos as well.